with my own eyes. I observed a modern British prison system on its knees, broken, decayed, draconian, Victorian, a cesspit of humanity, characterised by a mental health and drug epidemic of proportions never seen before in modern penal history. I observed a demoralised workforce with a record all-time high of prisoner on-staff violence and a record all-time high of self-harming. 50,000 acts of self-harm amongst 83,000 prisoners. Men detained within this cesspit of humanity, the overcrowded Victorian violent slum that is HMP Winchester, would howl into the night in despair, suffering catastrophic mental health breakdown due to prolonged periods of isolation. Through the gap in the side of my prison door, I would observe men in the early hours of the morning, dripping in blood, covered in self-harm scars. During my time detained at HMP Winchester, 4 men took their own life, including an 18-year-old whose life support machine was turned off without the family even being informed. The most alarming and disturbing human rights abuses I observed at this time in Winchester in 2016 was with short tariff, post-tariff IPPs serving Strasbourg-banned IPP prison sentences. So what is the IPP sentence? Because it's generating awareness, but not everybody knows what it is. The IPP sentence was introduced into the Criminal Justice Act in 2003. The IPP sentence was introduced by then new Labour government politicians Blair, Straw, Blunkett and Hilary Benn. The new Labour-Blair government politicised law and order, hijacking the graves of Sarah Payne and Jamie Bulger, and thus IPP was born, as was the Dangerousness Renaissance era. The very lifeblood of this Dangerousness Renaissance era is the state-controlled hysterical media which systematically targets high-profile criminal cases with racial bias for A, profit or financial gain, and B, to push state-sponsored current political ideology on behalf of their elite political actor associates, sowing mass hysteria and anxiety amongst the masses in the process. State-sponsored media over the past 14 years have pushed the dishonest narrative that IPP sentences were only given to dangerous offenders convicted of the worst crimes. This is untrue and is state-sponsored propaganda to A, deflect away from the sickening injustice of the IPP sentence, and B, to continue to justify keeping 2,500 men and women detained in custody for life, the majority of which should not even be in custody, let alone be serving a life sentence. The IPP sentence was not introduced for dangerous offenders. The IPP sentence was used as a political weapon and so introduced and implemented by the Blair government to win the 2005 general election and to satisfy the Labour voter mind already indoctrinated with the tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime, Sarah Payne, Jamie Bulger, politicisation of law and order, dead toddler, mass hysteria, New Labour, 1997 and 2001 hijack. The moment the Labour Party were elected in 2005, any logic regarding IPP ended immediately. IPP implementation was knee-jerk, astonishingly reckless, and born only out of political motivation without any regard for the consequences. The consequences being major loss of life, a modern-day massacre of self-harm, IPP suicide, and the utter erosion and decimation of our once great criminal justice system, along with the decimation of the foundation cornerstones of said British justice system, namely the rule of law, the right to a fair trial, individual liberty, justice, fairness, reason, and freedom from discrimination, as well as proportionate justice for victims. The consequences also are the continued infliction of some of the worst human rights abuses ever witnessed in modern European criminal justice and political history, inflicted upon short tariff IPPs and their families by successive failing Tory Justice Secretaries and the modern Tory British government. All short tariff IPP political prisoners of the modern British state, all IPP suicides whom are buried in coffins, all 70% of self-harming IPPs of the current 2,500 IPP prison estate enduring catastrophic mental health delirium, grey, gaunt, malnourished, skinny, 10 years over tariff, isolated in prison healthcare units and prison segregation units, carving chunks of flesh out of their legs, their arms, their wrists, their genitals, gouging their own eyeballs out with rusty prison razors and bleeding out in our Victorian, draconian, overcrowded slum modern British prison system. And all ongoing and near future IPP suicides are an accepted political collateral damage in the modern British Tory government maintaining their power in Parliament. On Friday, the 18th of September 2015, IPP prisoner Tommy Nicol, whom had received back-to-back 2-year parole knockbacks due to the state not being able to provide the courses to enable Tommy to be released, was moved into segregation unit at HMP The Mount. Tommy had already self-harmed and set fire to his cell as he endured mental health breakdown. Tommy became psychotic, stamped on his own fingers and threatened to gouge his own eyeballs out. On Monday, the 21st of September, Tommy Nicol was found hanging from the bars in his prison cell in the segregation unit at HMP The Mount. Despite Tommy Nicol's clear and obvious mental health breakdown, at no point during an 80-day period in which Tommy deteriorated mentally was a mental health assessment ever carried out. On the 5th of July 2019, now elected Tory leader Boris Johnson MP, in a blatant and bold move right out of the Tony Blair handbook, backed by his affiliates at the Daily Mail, resurrected the hijacking of dead toddlers Payne and Bolger, telling the world and the modern Tory voter he would wage war on soft justice. Again, 17th of July, backed by the state-sponsored BBC affiliate Danny Shaw, Boris Johnson indoctrinated the modern Tory voter mind, sowed mass hysteria and again resurrected the hijacking of the graves of dead toddlers Payne and Bolger, stating, "Too many prisoners are being let out early." The recent Conservative Tory government reshuffle has resulted in a modern British IPP death squad consisting of the following: Home Secretary Priti Patel, who openly and publicly supports the death penalty; Justice Secretary Robert Buckland QC, whom on the 11th of June 2019 at Westminster was categorical in his continued support of the IPP sentence; New Prisons Minister Lucy Fraser, whom has previously appeared in campaign leaflets with former Tory candidate George Stokely. George Stokely mocked Anne Frank's suffering while hiding from the Nazis and called AIDS weaponised semen. In 2015, Lucy Fraser laughed in the House of Commons about how Oliver Cromwell defeated the Scots at Dunbar and sent them as slaves to the colonies. Attorney General Geoffrey Cox QC, a multi-millionaire with a background of corruption, tax avoidance and criminality. In 2014, it emerged that Cox had ploughed money into a film investment project, Phoenix Film Partners, which the taxman later found to have been a tax avoidance scheme. In 2016, Cox was made to apologise for missing the deadline for declaring to the Commons more than near $500,000 in earnings. Geoffrey Cox, as Attorney General, is the Chief Law Officer of the Crown. Yet only 2 days ago, Cox was ordered to apologise to the Commons for giving the wrong information about when a family property should have been placed on the register of members' interests. You couldn't make this stuff up. These are the men and women residing over the modern British totalitarian penal and criminal justice system. So the IPP sentence is a life sentence, a 99-year prison term where the person serving the sentence has no right to release. The person serving the sentence is at the mercy of the parole board in England and Wales, which has been rendered ineffective due to the devastating influx of over 6,000 IPPs in a 7-year period before Strasbourg at the European Court of Human Rights condemned the sentence as cruel, arbitrary and barbaric. Recently, in an edition of prison newspaper Inside Times, Attorney General again, Geoffrey Cox QC, backed by Ministry of Justice neutralised Inside Times editor Erwin James, stated in an article, IPP sentences were given to the most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious offences. Again, propaganda, fake news. The most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious crimes are all serving 30-year plus mandatory life sentences in the high security Category A dispersal cluster prison estate. The most dangerous offenders convicted of the most serious offences are not serving IPP sentences with 15-month tariffs for the attempted robbery of a coat and a mobile phone, detained now for 14 years like Danny Weatherson.